Okay, hello everybody. My name is Lauren Smithson. I'm a Sapphire Ambassador with Plexus, and I am really excited and nervous to have this talk with you guys today about showing up during the hard times. A lot of you know my story, I think now, especially if you're one of my leaders or if you're my upline. Especially if you're my upline, I have shared all of this with you as it was happening. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I definitely want to get into some of the nitty-gritty of everything that I've gone through while I've been building this business, but my goal is not to use this as a vent session or a therapy session or just to have you guys feel like, wow, you've been through a lot. That is not the point of this call at all. I just want to share that it is doable and you are capable of continuing to grow even when times are really, really hard. So I just wanted to preface this call with that because I just think it's important for you to know that I don't want to just use this as a vent session. So without further ado, I will get started. I started Plexus in December of 2017. And if I look back into my old messages with Jackie, I said to her that I was bloated after eating. I had no energy. I didn't sleep at night. Those were all very true things. I also said to her that I would like to start my family. I wanted to start having kids, and I was having trouble getting my period back after getting off of birth control. And all of that are things that I've shared on social media, except for the wanting to start a family part. I always shared about my bloating issues. I always shared about my sleep issues. I was really comfortable telling everybody on social media about that part of my story, but I still to this day have never shared that was my main reason for starting Plexus, was that I wanted to get my period regulated and I wanted to be able to start my family because I just knew that something wasn't right. So I started taking the products and I started sharing right away because I didn't want to have to budget for them, of course, like many of us do. And thankfully, I had some people start sharing with me right away, and it just kind of started taking off. And that was wonderful. So in that first couple of years, it went really fast. While I was at work in between patients, I was messaging people and I was helping my friends that were share with people too. After work, I'd spend a lot of my time doing that, all while we were starting to try for a family, and my period still wasn't great. Sorry if that's TMI for some of you. It just wasn't really going well, but I was still just like, well, sometimes it takes a while. And so I had gone to the doctor a little bit. I had gotten a couple medications a couple times to jumpstart my period and try things, and nothing was really working. And I was sharing and growing, but also underlying, there was this issue of what is going on? Why is nothing happening? Just always thinking about that in the back of my mind. So within also that first couple of years, not only were we dealing with this potential fertility struggle, we really didn't have any answers at that point, but we were moving a lot. My husband and I worked for the same hospital in the UP in the Upper Peninsula, and the hospital was not doing well. And we owned a house, and we're like, well, if this hospital goes under and we both work for the same place, how are we going to pay our mortgage? And thankfully, I was sharing Plexus at the time, but I think I was gold when we put our house up for sale, and it sold within a day, which was unexpected. And we're like, okay, so now we have to move as well. And that turned into the next year of moving 3 times within that year. So I was gold when we put our house up for sale. We started packing. We moved into a rental, which we were there for 6 months. And then somebody bought the house we were renting, so we had to move to another rental. And that rental, we made it into a studio. It was not ideal, not a great place to live. The only bathroom was upstairs, and where all of our clothes were in rooms that didn't have light bulbs. I'm not even joking. We had lamps that we'd plug in, and we would figure out what we were wearing for the day, and that's what we had. So I would get ready in the dark for work. It was not an ideal situation. So fertility struggles, we'd moved twice at that point, and I was like, you know what, with the fertility stuff we're going through and this weird living situation, I just can't be here anymore. I can't do it. So we moved back to Grand Rapids, which is like 8 hours from where we were living. For me to be closer to my family and to start getting some help fertility wise, because I just knew that there was something more going on and there wasn't a ton of support. I didn't feel like in a rural area. So I just wanted to go back to where I was comfortable. Fortunately for me, I got a job pretty quickly. My husband did not. So I moved into a rental in Grand Rapids and he stayed in the UP, and we were apart for 8 months of our marriage. Not separated, but like physically we were apart. So of course, no babies were being made during that time either. So it just felt like it was even more stalling our journey in that way as well. But thankfully, during all of that, I was still growing. So the first rental we went to, I ended up going Ruby. Our second rental, senior Ruby, and then I moved to Grand Rapids. And 2 months after moving to Grand Rapids, I went Emerald. So I shouldn't say my team, we all were part of that, went Emerald. And so all the moving, all the fertility struggles, all the heartache in those couple of years still was tons of growth. So what was I doing? I was still showing up every day. I was still on team calls. I was still on book clubs. Even if I was packing up stuff, I'd be listening to the team call. I'd be listening to book club. If I had to lead one, because I was leading stuff by then too, I would figure out what I had to do for the day to get ready for that call, and I would lead it. I remember there were so many calls. I can think of a few off the top of my head where I had a really hard day that day and I was crying and I was like, okay, but I still am leading book club tonight. So I would get my crap together, wipe off my tears, figure it out, and I would still lead. And that's not for everybody. Sometimes that wasn't the case. Sometimes I needed to say, hey, I can't do this one today. It's just not going to work for me. But a lot of times I still would wipe the tears and figure it out. Again, that's not for everybody, but a lot of times that can happen. You can do more than you think that you can. Where else was I wanting to go with that? So I showed up to team calls and book clubs every day. I still knew that I had customers that had questions. I had teammates that were still growing. So this wasn't just about me and all the stuff I was going through, but my team still wanted to grow too. So I had to remember that I was showing up for them as well. And I think that's a really important message to take from this, is that no matter what life stuff happens to you, you still have people that are relying on you. So if you think of it in a service way, rather than being stressed about what you're going through, it's a lot easier to show up day to day. So there we were with that. So then we started some more of the more intense fertility treatments because my husband finally got a job. We moved again into the house that we're in now. Thank goodness we haven't moved in 3 years. Like, I just want to clap for us for that. 3.5 almost years we've lived in the same house, which is the longest we've lived in any place. So that's really huge. But again, I know a lot of people that are moving or have moved, and it's stressful, but you still can do the things, I promise. So we started getting more intense fertility treatments. That means lots of medications and hormone changes and ups and downs, and just a lot of focus goes on that. Again, I don't want to make this a woe is me thing and talk about every single detail, but we did, again, medications, IUI, which is when they basically time everything for you. And then we decided to do IVF. And that is a really big decision mentally and financially, but thank goodness for Plexus. If this isn't a testament to Plexus, I don't know what is. I was Sapphire at that time. So doing something like IVF is a lot more doable when you have multiple streams of income. So guys, life is going to happen. Wouldn't you rather have like a really solid income to help you when those life things happen? Because maybe you're not going to go through the same struggles I went through, but I'm going to list a few other ones that I know of people that have gone through these, and you want to have the more resources you have, the better, right? Is I guess what I'm saying. So thankfully I did not have not had that huge burden hanging over me that a lot of people that struggle with fertility do. And we've been able to make a lot of decisions that weren't based on our finances and just based on we wanted a family and we wanted to do everything we could because we had Plexus in our lives. So I'm so thankful for that. But besides that, IVF is like a full-time job between medications, going to doctor's appointments, the emotional and physical toll that it takes on your body. It's a lot. And so that was the last 2.5 years of our lives. We did an egg retrieval. Our first one was December of 2019. Nope, 2020, December of 2020. And we did our first transfer. We got 3 embryos from that round. We did our first transfer in February, March of the next year. And it was successful. And that was great. And that was exciting. And we went to our first ultrasound and we had miscarried. So not only now was I had all this hope and I thought that this was our answer. And then we had a miscarriage, which was grief again. And it just had felt like at that point, it was like 3.5 years of trying, and it was pretty much grief that whole time, right? You're just waiting. What's happening? And then a miscarriage, and you're just like, oh, like, I don't know how much more I can handle. So then I'm not the type to do the same thing twice. So I went and did a lot of research, looked into getting more answers, and came across a reproductive immunologist. Thankfully, there's only 5 in the country. There's one that's in Detroit, which is like 2.5 hours from my house. Thank God. So I've been seeing him since then. He found some issues with my immune system, just basically being overactive and thinking that the baby was something it needed to attack. So again, more medications, more appointments, driving 2.5 hours instead of 15 minutes down the road. Often, he also, an interesting thing he found is that I did have more than one gene mutation, the MTHFR gene mutation we talk all the time about. I have 2 or 3 of those. So again, a testament to Plexus and the amazing products we have. All of our products are methylated and bioavailable, and they go into our bodies and they can use them right away. So one of the things that he wanted me to be on is a prenatal that has methylated folate. What do we have? X Factor Plus and X Factor, like, thank goodness, right? So anyway, there's other things he had me on for other things that he found too, but I'm just saying, like, we're really blessed to have the products that we have here. So ended up doing 6 months later, because it's not like IVF is not like everyone else where you can just try for free every month, or you have these embryos, let's just do another one. There's money that goes into it, months of preparation for your body in terms of like medications and shots to get your body ready to have an egg or embryo transfer. It's not just simple. So it's usually about, for us, it was at least 6 months in between each cycle that we could try. So again, time, feeling like I'm behind, all the things. And then September of that year, we had another transfer and it didn't work. And I was like, dang, I thought I had figured everything out that I needed to figure out. I thought I had all my answers, nothing. And unless you've been through it, it's hard to imagine, but going through a loss like that, an embryo loss, it is a loss. Like, to me, those are my potential children. And I only had 3 chances at that time. And that was my second one. And I was like, I only have 1 embryo left. It's not great quality. Like, what do I do? And so it just felt like a really big loss. It's grieving. And to me, it felt like a death. And so again, continuing to show up, even though I had gone through that. However, I will say the last 2 years during IVF have been the heaviest and the hardest, while continuing to grow my business, but I'm still doing my very best. So I'm thankful for that. And there are going to be times for you guys and for me still where real legitimate grief stuff happens. And so that day that I found out our embryo transfer didn't work, if it was a book club or a team call, I might have been like, you know what, I just need to go to sleep, or I need to cry, or I need to be with my husband. And that would be a legitimate reason to miss something, right? Stuff could happen that you have to grieve, and you can cry, and you can take a day, you can take a week. Nobody can tell you how long to grieve for anything, but you just can't stay there. You just can't stay there and put up art on the walls and like buy furniture for your grief pit. Even though things are really heavy. So crawled out of the grief pit again and decided to do another egg retrieval because I was turning 33 now that year. This was 2021. And I just knew that I would probably want more than one more embryo, one more chance, because that wasn't the greatest quality embryo I had left. And I was getting older. So I had been on this reproductive immunologist protocol for a long time at that point. And we did another egg retrieval, and we got tons of healthy embryos this time, which was such a blessing. This was February of 2022, March 2022. So I felt like we had so much hope again. And we had a lot of embryos, and we were feeling like, okay, we've got chances. And then we've been on all this protocol. We're going to have this work this time. So 8 months after our last transfer, which was September the year before, May of 2022, we transferred again. I thought for sure it was going to work. We had healthier embryos this time. I had been on this protocol for over a year, and it failed again. And so it was just like, ugh, like dagger to the heart. Like, what else can we even do? And again, just grief, piled upon grief. And it really starts to get to you. At that point, it's 4.5 years of trying, and you're just like, what else do we do? But again, continue to show up as much as I could. And I'm going to get into some of that even more specifically once I finish with my story. I'm almost done. So then we took the summer, and I did a little bit more research, but not a lot. I didn't really know what else to do. We changed a couple of things for my next protocol. And in October of 2022, we transferred for our fourth time. We transferred 2 embryos, and one stuck, and I'm now gonna cry. Whew. 17 weeks pregnant this week. Thank goodness. I did not expect to cry. Sorry. So I'm just so thankful that I didn't stop trying and that I gave it my all. And I'm thankful for Plexus that I could financially continue to do that. I'm thankful for my team for being supportive and all of that. Ooh, I might need a minute. Anyway, so thankful for all of you for all of that. But the point is, I'm just thankful, obviously, to be here physically and to have this dream come true. And I'm definitely not out of the woods. I'm like scared all the time because I just know so much of what could happen. But I just wanted to share that to show you that you guys saw me rank up to Emerald and to Sapphire. You saw me earn trips to Hawaii and to Mexico. You saw me earn Alexis and all of these things within that time. And that is what you saw. That is what my friends saw. That is what the world saw, while all of this other stuff was going on in the background. So life's not always going to be easy. We're all going to have, all of us, everybody watching me talk and cry right now, there's going to be something that happens. Your story might not be mine, but I know people that have had tragic loss in the last 5 years. I know people that have moved. I know people that have had lots of kids within that time. I know people that have gone through terrible heartache within that time. And it's still doable to choose your priorities and show up and help the people that you told that you would help, right? Life's not going to be perfect. I know I'm even going to have more added to my story of things that are going to be causing me to struggle in the next 5 years plus. Hopefully I have this baby and they're going to get sick sometime. It happens. All kids get sick. I'm probably going to get sick. at some point we all have stuff, whether it's the sniffles or a legitimate sickness, we're all going to have something that comes up, and it's up to us to decide to show up anyway. Like I said, if there's crisis or a loss or significant grief that's happening, it's okay to take a day, to take a week, to fully grieve what you have to grieve, but you just can't stay in the pit and put up furniture. And that I remember hearing that so many times within this journey of like, you just can't stay there. I know Elizabeth and Jackie have said that to me a lot. And sometimes it's hard to hear because you just want to stay in your pit of sorrow and like grieve for yourself, and you want people to pull you out for you because it's too hard to do yourself. And we will, if you communicate with your people, they'll help you pull yourself out of there too. So just remember that you're going to have some stuff come up. You just will. So a little bit more about the how though, because I wrote some legitimate notes and I'm going to try to get back on track here. Thankfully, we have really great systems in Rock Your Purpose, right? So the stuff that you can't control, the unexpected grief that happens, the unexpected life that happens, if you have good habits, if you have good systems already in place, then when something happens, because it's not if, but when something happens, you can fall back on those systems. You can fall back on your good habits. So that's why when life's not crazy, when you're not going through something and grieving, it's important that you have good systems. You take the time on the weekends or when you have a little extra time to make sure you have solid stuff in place, because other things are going to happen. And if that stuff's solid, then you're going to be supported even when life goes crazy. I think also I wanted to highlight that I think, at least for myself, I tend to overcomplicate things that are not complicated. So I like gear up in my head. I'm like, oh, I have IPA to do. But if I really think about it, IPA takes like 30 to 60 minutes. It really doesn't take that long to do the actual like legitimate IPA. If you have a big team, it can take longer. But if you have good systems in place and you have a list of your non-negotiables, even on your hard days, you can say, you know what, today wasn't easy, but I'm going to do my 30 minutes. I'm going to set a timer and I'm going to at least get through X, Y, Z of my non-negotiables. So again, that's when life goes crazy. You have these things that are non-negotiables. Again, take a day, take a week, maybe not a week, depending on what your grief is, what it is you're going through. You can take time. You just can't stay there, and you got to lean on your systems that you have in place. Now, life happens sometimes that is planned, and I think sometimes we use those things as excuses to not show up, right? We're like, oh, I have a surgery, or I have a procedure, or I'm moving, or I have this trip that's coming up, my kid's getting braces, whatever it is. We have life that happens that's planned sometimes, and I have seen it in myself and I've seen it in other people, and we're like, I can't show up because I have stuff that's going on. But if you know about it ahead of time, you likely can do still your non-negotiables, even during those things too. So some tips I have for you, like if you have a trip coming up or a procedure coming up, then leading up to that, really front load your time. So double up on your IPA, get a lot of your coaching calls done before your procedure. Really communicate with your team and let them know, hey, I'm going to be unavailable on these days. Let your upline know so they can help your downline. Let your downline know as much as you can. You don't have to fill them in on everything if you don't think it's appropriate. But just to let them know, hey, these days I'm going to be a little bit busy or I'm not going to be available. And just communication is going to be key in front loading your work and front loading your productivity so that you still are not falling behind, or you're not 3 months later and you're like, shoot, I guess I really hadn't been doing anything the last 3 months. My business isn't where I want it to be. Because the nice thing about Plexus and this business is that it is flexible. We don't have somebody that's our boss saying like, you have to work these hours. You can say, I had a hard day, I can't do as much today, or I'm going to be gone on vacation, I'm not going to work on these days. So it's up to you to work the days before or to figure out what you can do. so that you can still be productive. If you have goals in this business, if you want to have a residual income, you still have to do the stuff, even on the days that are hard, even on the days you don't want to, because you have goals. And I think one last thing that I want to say is, what was I going to say? Shoot, I'm losing my train of thought. Oh, I think a lot of times we focus on all this is happening. I can't do this. These are the things I can't do. It's feeling like too much. But if you are in consistent grief, like I was for a long time, or even the short-term grief or vacation or whatever it is, focus on what you can do instead of what you can't. Okay, maybe I can't do an hour of IPA today because this awful thing happened, but maybe I can make sure those 3 people that were on my list to check in with today are doing okay, because that's part of my system that I have in place. Focus on what you can do, and you will start to chip away at getting yourself out of that hole if you're in a hole. And you'll continue to be consistent, and you'll continue to grow because you're being consistent, even on the days that you don't want to. Because believe me, everybody listening in right now, whether you're sapphire or silver, you've had days where you feel like you can't do it, but you do it anyway, right? So, okay, I think that's everything that I have to share with you guys. I wanted to give you some practical tips while also sharing with you what I've been through to show you that this is doable. You can do this no matter what you're going through. And if it feels like you can't, then I want you to rely on your upline and talk to them about it, because they will help you figure out how you really can do this. So thank you so much for listening and being supportive during my tears, and supportive in general during this last 5 years, because a lot of you have been. So thank you. And I hope you guys have a wonderful night.